all my life, but I thought that the pro-life movement didn't care about women and that they only cared about the baby. And I care about babies too, but I wanted somebody to tell me, how do you solve the problems that women and teenage girls face? For Feminists for Life, it's about systematically eliminating the root cause that drives women to abortion, and that's what we need to focus on. What is it that women want, that they don't have, that they need in order to support a child? There isn't any exception here. We can help them.
For more than 3 decades, Feminists for Life President Serrin Foster has been reclaiming the pro-life roots of the women's movement. Not with outreach, but with clarity, history, and a fierce commitment to women facing the most difficult moments of their lives. She's a creator of the Women Deserve Better campaign and also her landmark speech, The Feminist Case Against Abortion. It's recognized as one of the greatest speeches in the history of women's rights. Under her leadership since 1994, Feminists for Life has delivered real, measurable change, expanding health coverage to poor and pregnant women, defeating punitive welfare policies, and protecting mothers from coercive child support threats, and also transforming campuses across the country with resources for pregnant and parenting students. But Serrin's work is more than policy, it's deeply human. She's listened to the stories that most people never hear. From women who thought they had no choice, from students who came to protest and left transformed, and men who still carry the hidden grief of abortion years later. She's seen minds change in a single conversation. She's seen young people who grew up believing abortion was normal suddenly realize they deserved better than abandonment, pressure, and fear. And she has restored what the earliest American feminists knew, that defending women and defending children were never meant to be competing causes. They were part of the same fight for human dignity. Today, we talk about the lost history of the pro-life feminism, the surprising ways hearts change, and the practical solutions women need so no one feels forced into an abortion ever again. This is Living Pro-Life. Hey, thanks for listening to Living Pro-Life. Make sure to be part of the growing base of people making Coalition Life happen. And so we ask you today, please consider donating $1 for our One Life campaign. Your $1 can help build a culture of life. Your $1 can help save a baby from the tragedy of abortion. Your $1 can help women in need who need us more than ever. Consider donating $1 today, supporting our mission here at Coalition Life, and ultimately helping to end abortion throughout our great country. Now back to Living Pro-Life. Well, welcome, Serrin. We're glad you are on the program. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Ryan.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun today, and I think we might start with a bit of a history lesson. There with Feminists for Life. You've been around for quite a long time, I think even before Roe versus Wade. And I think there's a lot of history, and people are very excited to hear about what Feminists for Life has in store for the future. But tell us how it started. How did we get here today?
The year before Roe, feminists around this country who are pro-life started realizing that the abortion advocates were going to hijack the women's movement. And the women's movement at that time was about equal pay and promotion opportunities and at their job sites and that sort of thing. And all of a sudden it started becoming about abortion. And these were pro-life feminists who supported women in the workplace, the opportunity to have a career, et cetera, things that seem normal now. But when they started saying that we could have an abortion and that our rights come at the expense of our children, it shocked them. And so they started Feminists for Life. So we've been around a year before Roe v. Wade. Feminists for Life was founded. So it's one of the oldest pro-life groups in the country. I came on board 31 years ago. I was in high school when Feminists for Life was founded. And I graduated from high school the year of Roe v. Wade, and it was a complete and utter shocker. Feminists for Life is really the renaissance of the women's movement, the suffragists who were pro-woman and pro-life. Most people don't know, even if they're taught in women's studies today on college campuses, that the early American feminists opposed abortion in no uncertain terms, that they believed in the worth of all human beings, that the same women who fought for the rights of slaves to be free and women to vote also fought for our right to life. And they were incredibly brave. And they aligned themselves with the medical profession and the media, which were both pro-life at the time, and the triad worked to enact laws to protect women and children from abortion. So we didn't know this. I was a pro-life feminist when I was in college. I thought I was all alone. And when I found Feminists for Life after working at 2 nonprofit organizations, I thought, I'm home. This is who I am. This is what I've been about all my life. But I thought that the pro-life movement didn't care about women and that they only cared about the baby. And I care about babies too, but I wanted somebody to tell me, how do you solve the problems that women and teenage girls face? And that's what we do at Feminists for Life.
Incredible. Well, today we're being told that men can become women and women can become men. So how do we communicate that, it's very, very clear that, you can only become a boy and become a man, that there's really only 2 genders. So how do we communicate that and articulate it? And I think we have a very broken world right now.
Well, I think we have to go back to when we started dismissing men in the feminist movement. And when you don't respect men and you see them all as evil, they think they're unnecessary in the family, you start with a problem. So we need to go back a little bit more and think about that. And I know that it doesn't always work out. Families don't always work out, but I think that we've got to step it up a little and respecting men and understanding what people like my dad contributed to my life, to my mother's life, etc. And they can help. They're not always a hindrance. No, men are not always perfect, but neither are women. And so I want us to get back to the place where we respect, or even advance from where we were. Really respect, understand what we can contribute to a relationship, and how important both parents are to their children. Not that you can live without, of course you can live without a dad or a mom. But isn't it wonderful to have a role model as a dad? Isn't it wonderful to have a role model who's a mother? We've had one magazine fairly recently called Legacy, and we talk about the gifts that men give to Feminists for Life and to women in general. So I think that's really important to talk about what men can contribute and their strength and dignity, not just the strength and dignity of women, but the strength and dignity of men and the capacity of every human being, including the one that's in the womb. And it's a great thing. And it's science-based.
Wow. So we're chatting Feminist for Life, and she brings up the importance of men and fathers. I love it. I love it. I really have a heart for men and for their roles as fathers and husbands. I think we have a very important duty as fathers and husbands that I don't think we can just pass off. We certainly can't pass it off to the government and see, well, since I'm not providing for my children and my wife, that we'll just let the government do it for me. I just think that's a terrible way to run a society. We got a lot going on in our society today here in the United States, and of course around the world. And so, of course, we had the Dobbs decision that happened. And so this was a big promise that the Dobbs decision was going to remove Roe versus Wade and open the floodgates of pro-life laws around the country and protecting life from every step of the development. But it doesn't seem to have done that. So any thoughts from your position on what Feminists for Life think of it?
I mean, I look at that decision with mixed feelings about it, because I wish we had just said that there's a value in every human being and it starts with the moment of conception. If we really believed in the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then why don't we focus on that, those 3 rights, instead of having different states where women and children are not protected from abortion. And so we've got a balkanized country, or it's much like Europe, if you think about it, where you have some places where women and children are protected in Poland or Malta, or this sort of thing, or it used to be in Ireland. And so people will just like go over to the next place. So for Feminists for Life, it's about systematically eliminating the root cause that drives women to abortion. And that's what we need to focus on. What is it that women want that they don't have, that they need in order to support a child? Or what is it that we need to communicate so we can prevent some of these horror stories of teenagers and college students leaving their baby to die in a trash can through safe haven laws? How can we better communicate that they don't have to go it alone, that there are pregnancy resource centers across this country, that there are like hundreds of thousands of perfect strangers who will help you unconditionally, and that they come from so many places, that Feminists for Life has a help site called Women Deserve Better, inspired by our slogan, Women Deserve Better Than Abortion. And so what is it that they need? So we've been listening to women and articulating, and it's not just about when they're pregnant. They have to be able to visualize they can do this as a parent. And so what is it? Housing, childcare, maternity coverage, telecommuting options, a living wage, all those things are essential. How we can help her continue her education so she doesn't drop out of school, face a lifetime of poverty, or end up sitting on a grate in Washington, D.C. because she doesn't have a home. I mean, those are the choices. When you listen to women who have had abortions or the women who are pregnant and scared to death, we can help them. There isn't any exception here. We can help them. This movement is quite capable of that. We've set up thousands of pregnancy resource centers in this country. So how do we get through to all these teens who have been looking at Planned Parenthood's website that tells them you can't do things? How anti-feminist. You can't be a mom. You can't do this. But if they really are incapable or just not prepared to be a mom, we had one of our board members who placed her baby for adoption. What I've learned is that there's life after adoption. It's one of the many surprises of Feminists for Life, that you can know your child afterwards, and that she met him every year after his birthday. He would pray at night for his belly button mommy. He knew who his parents were. But when she got married, he was the ring bearer, and his adopted sister was the flower girl. And a couple of years ago, he came home to visit her during spring break because he's a college student at one of the UC schools. I mean, it's just, there's life after adoption, and that's so beautiful, and that adoption has changed. It's one of the many things that are just getting better and better.
Absolutely. You mentioned the safe haven laws around the country, and a safe haven box, and many of them are placed in prominent locations around our communities. At least here where I live in Missouri, we recently had a great story done about a firehouse and the baby boxes that are there. So tell us a little bit about what is safe haven, and for those who might be listening, why it's important.
Safe havens are most often fire departments, sometimes hospitals, sometimes police departments. That might have started in Asia beforehand, where and other countries, where they would have a box at a convent, and you could put your baby there, and then the nuns would swing it around and take the baby in case a mother really couldn't, maybe hid her pregnancy, didn't want to tell her parents, etc. And so when we saw all these horrible cases, basically infanticide, the pro-life movement took this on, and state by state, there's been real heroes that have advocated the safe haven, so we don't see tragedies like at the University of Kentucky, where a woman, college student, a cheerleader, had her baby and put her baby in a trash bag and left it in her closet. Now, we don't know all the details about what happened there yet, but I do know personally somebody who committed infanticide when she didn't know that she was pregnant. She was very young. It was the night before her wedding, and went into labor, went into shock. She was Filipino, and her culture, family were fine with her getting married very early. She wrapped the baby in monochrome towels, didn't know to clean the breathing way and all that. I mean, and so she put the baby in a ditch, and she got arrested afterwards. I mean, the whole thing, and she hadn't gained any weight. It was just bizarre. So anyway, that's not primarily what we do, but it's part of what we do, is educating people about that. We have 8 choices: marital parenting, single parenting, partner parenting, adoption, open, closed, and semi-open, of course, but also kinship care and guardianship. Okay, there are 8 nonviolent choices, okay, besides the safe haven, okay? Right. And so, we had a student who was interning for us from Howard University, and her mom was taking care of her children. She had children in high school, and she was at Howard University, And every other weekend, she'd go back to Ohio and see her mom and her children. But she chose kinship care. Guardianship is another, legal version of giving someone in your family, maybe your parents, maybe an older sister who's married, that sort of thing, and who are prepared to have children, but knowing your child and having that relationship still. So it's like a fantastic world of choices. So we're not anti-choice. We're pro-choice. We're pro-life choices.
100%. We're talking with the president of the Feminists for Life, Serrin Foster. We're glad you're on the program. And I think you have had this really popular speech that you gave a while back. We'll just say that much. Tell us a little bit about that and why you're so popular because of it.
Oh, I thank you. There's a book called Women's Rights. It's part of an anthology on the great speeches in history. And so I'm included in one of the latter sections along with Susan B. Anthony and all the early American feminists and more contemporary people that are like the Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, who was on the international stage as a pro-life feminist, and a lot of feminists who are not pro-life. And so I'm in between Hillary Clinton and somebody else from NARAL. But I continue to present that speech and evolve it. And I think what's important is that the way that I come at speeches is very different than a lot of speakers. We have a Q&A, but I think one of the things I do, and I think I want to teach this to other leaders in the movement, is that I walk up to protesters, not with a gang of pro-life students behind me because you're just sent up in some weird situation. But I come up and I thank them for coming. That I know, even though they have lived in a known day without being protected from legalized abortion, that they're expected to have sex and not expected to have a child at that age. Mm-hmm. I wanted to hear from them as much as they were willing to listen to me, even if they were planning on disrupting me, but I thank them. It changes the dynamic right from the beginning, or when they come in and we start our Q&A, that I thank them for their willingness to listen to me. And that I want to hear from them and what is it that they're challenged by? And then we go through the objections, that sort of thing. Never be snarky, never one up them, never humiliate them with your knowledge. They are kids. I mean, frankly, they are kids. They're still developing. Your brain still doesn't fully function, they say, until you're 26 or something. I'm not sure it's even then. But anyway, but they're trying, and they're trying to help other people in a way. You have well-meaning guys who will sit there and support, abortion for rape because they wish they could have protected her. Yeah. Well, you don't protect a woman after a rape by killing her baby and making her go through this. And I'll talk about different stories about that. But the feminist case against abortion is the brilliant story of the early American feminists and all their fantastic quotes. And there are so many of them. You can watch a video of my speech on feministsforlife.org's website, the feminist case of abortion. The women's history part is up there. But then I transitioned to, so how did we lose this movement? How did we lose the feminist movement? And the failure that came out of the Supreme Court decision to legalize Roe, and the documented failure of who was having abortions. The poor, 73% of them are the poorest among us. How is that a win for feminism? Or that 60-some% of them are women who already have children. They know what's inside them. How is that happening? It's poverty. How is it that it's mostly minority women? So we go through all that, and then we sit there and talk about what we can do and have done. Remarkable change on college campuses to welcome parents and support them so they don't have to choose between their education and career plans or they're sacrificing their children.
Wow. Again, we're talking with Serrin Foster with Feminists for Life. We talked about a lot of surprises you had. You've been doing this for 31 years. Incredible. So thank you for your tireless work in the movement. So what are some of the surprises along the way?
Men. How many men have come to me and told me their abortion stories? The harm that this has done to men, and you talked about, bringing men back into the family and this sort of thing. It's just, we haven't recognized the pain that abortion has done to them. How many men have not had a choice? How many men were afraid, just like women were, when they found out they were first pregnant because they didn't feel they were prepared? There was one guy who came to my office from a military academy. He said, he just came in unannounced, and I was working by myself at the time. We were very poor, still very poor, but not in the same way. But he came to my office and said he wanted to volunteer, but then all of a sudden said, today is the 10th anniversary of my son. And I did nothing. I was a coward. And he was at a military academy. his girlfriend who he planned on marrying was at an all-women's college. And her brother said when she was 5 months in the womb that she could have an abortion, they could have other children, that they could get married later and all that. And his parents said the same thing, because if you're in a military academy, you can't keep children. It's still true to this day. They've got to do something better than this. I mean, besides relinquishing your children to adoption, which not everybody wants to do. And so some people think instead of adoption, I'm going to have an abortion. It's not the same thing either. But anyway, he's in my office sobbing. And I'll tell you, he promised to come back the next day. They never got married. She never reunited with him, and I never saw him again. But that story has stuck with me, along with all these people who I've met on trains and airplanes, et cetera, going across the country, and telling me their abortion stories when they would tell a perfect stranger they hadn't even told their wives. There are other surprises, too, like having Women Deserve Better Than Abortion become part of the Republican platform, while the meaning of it, the solutions for women, were in the Democratic platform, except for they still supported abortions. That was a mistake. I would just want them to come together. Women Deserve Better Than Abortion means resources and support, unconditional love, and you can do it, and believing in yourself, and believing that other people will help you if you don't believe in yourself at that moment. I mean, obviously the surprise about the early American feminists being pro-life. I mean, that was a total shocker. And seeing how many pro-life pro-life students are now leaders in the pro-life movement today. You see a lot of women. I'm telling you, they all saw the speech when they were 30 years ago, whatever, at different places. And then the other surprise that I think is most notable is a student coming up after my speech at University of Pittsburgh. And the pro-life students were around. We were all celebrating. We had a great event, lots of people there, blah, blah, blah. And this woman came over and she was watching us. And she said, "Have you ever changed anybody's mind?" And I said, "Well, actually, a lot of people who come to protest us say they agree with like 98% of what we say, especially focusing on resources and support." And then she said, "Well, in the short time you spoke," and I'm a talker, my speech is more like an hour. I don't know, it's 50 minutes or so. So it must have been riveting. And she said, I told my friend today that I was coming to your speech because I plan on going to med school next year, which she had already been accepted, to become an abortion provider. But in the half hour you spoke, I've decided I will never perform an abortion. And I will never refer for an abortion. I said, "Would you write it down?" She said, "Okay, I've got it on my jewelry box." I've got other stories like that. UVA, there was a student who came, she was pro-choice, she listened. She started a babysitting club right afterwards so that parents could have a night off and support them. She later on wrote a letter saying she's involved in pregnancy care and domestic violence shelters because of that speech. I had another young woman from the University of Delaware who wrote and said she wanted to apologize to me because she came to mock me. She literally wrote, "I came to mock you, but you welcomed me. And I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed and I was ashamed. And you made me feel terrible, but in a good way." She literally said, "In a good way." And so I wanted to tell you thank you. So, I mean, it's just, you can't believe the changes when you meet people where there are. Paul Swope wrote a wonderful article years ago, "A Failure to Communicate." And it was about the fact that pro-lifers see everything in black and white. They don't see it. These kids see themselves wrapped in freedom and rights, and they don't understand its wrongs, and it's really trapping them, and that they're robbing themselves of one of the most amazing experiences in their life to be a mom. Not that everybody has to be a mom. I'm not a mom. We're like Susan B. Anthony, traveling the world by train, and my little black outfits, and like she did too, and just spreading the news. She never came. She was not at the first meeting when they voted for suffrage, because she was teaching everybody else's children. Okay, so but I love the surprises, and they keep on coming.
Yeah,
I'm surprised by the pro-life students who intern to us. And by the way, how many of our supporters are men? Because they like what we're doing and they support it, or they consider themselves feminists too. Feminist doesn't mean a woman. It means that you believe in the dignity of every life and you believe in true equality. Okay. And that doesn't mean we're the same. Everybody's got different talents, even within the same gender. Right.
Yeah.
So really it's supporting the value of everyone's life and believing in the strength and dignity of women. But yeah, let's bring in men too.
Well, I think one prominent man who mentioned some of your work was Pope John Paul II. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. In the Gospel of Life, he wrote a section calling for a new feminism, which was basically a pro-life feminism. And that's section 99. Section 100 was a call for women who had had abortions to come back to their faith, to seek God. So it's just been very surprising where Feminists for Life has landed. Different celebrities, politicians, the wife of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was on our board. I mean, you never know where people are going to end up with their Emmys, et cetera. It's been a wild ride. Not that it's over for me yet, but I'm just looking for what are the next surprises going to be.
Exactly.
And one of the best of them is knowing you. So thank you, Brian.
Well, I'm honored to have you on the program. I didn't know who I would meet as we started this great journey of podcasting, but I've met some fantastic people along the way. Serrin, tell us how we can get involved with Feminists for Life. What's our next steps?
Well, thank you. First of all, if you want to check out feministsforlife.org, I would encourage everybody to go to our website, watch my speech if you want to see that portion of the early American feminists. We also have all the history. We've got all the documentation of these powerful, incredible statements like Alice Paul, who called abortion the ultimate in the exploitation of women, or Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the founder of the women's movement, who called it murder. Who called it infanticide. I mean, it just, the documentation is awesome. So I would encourage people to join us, to support us, to think about what they could do with their level of capacity, but get to know us. Join us on Facebook or Instagram. If you're a writer, we need writers. We need volunteers with our help site, especially if they're like doctors or they have financial gifts and they know how to deal with the new tax laws and that sort of thing, because we're talking about helping women through a spectrum of life. Their child tax credits, they change from different administrations. So if you're a writer and you want to share your story about your unplanned pregnancy, we also share joy stories about the gifts of women. But the next issue of the American Feminist, that's our magazine, is going to focus on what we rarely talk about, which is going to be benefits of motherhood to women. How many times have we heard about it? They're expensive and they ruin your body and they're going to ruin your life and you can't have a career and all this kind of stuff. I really encourage people to join us before we put out that publication. And it's brilliant. And it's not saccharine because we understand there are challenges, but we also offer resources and support.
Incredible. So just because I know my wife might be listening and maybe even my daughters, so what would you say would be maybe one or two of those like benefits of being a mother?
Wow. Well, not being a mom, I can only put it third hand, but some are talking about how the sacrifice of being a mom is eclipsed by the joy that they have, and that knowing what it is all about, they would never trade it for the world for their other choice. Okay. Or how it helps them become a multitasker, or the miracle stories of women who were saved by their unborn babies. I mean, you can't believe this. Growing within them. So there's a lot of that, and it's amazing. It's just a really riveting issue, and it's been unexplored like a lot of topics that we have in past. Yeah. All of our issues are evergreen, and so if you want to talk about a topic, you can look there for a topic and get that issue. We have collections.
Incredible. Well, any final words for our listeners as we head off to our next episode?
Yeah, don't hate feminists. Don't hate feminists. We're not all the same. It's like as stupid as hating men. Okay, we don't do this. I understand that the first feminists were pro-life and we're the Renaissance, and that I bet that most of your listeners, whether they like it or not, are pro-life feminists, because if they're willing to help women and support women and they advocate for the lives of unborn children and support of their mothers, then they walk in the footsteps of Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Alice Paul, and the other great suffragists who worked for almost a century, it's like 75 years, to get women the right to vote. I mean, it's amazing. Read these people. They are riveting. Everything that they're talking about is what we're dealing with now.
Incredible. Well, again, our guest with Feminists for Life, Serrin Foster. Thanks for being on the program.
I appreciate it, Brian. Thank you so much.